Good morning, folks. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to log on, and we will get started in just one moment. Good afternoon, I should say, not good morning. It just feels like morning. Again, good afternoon. My name is Stephen Warner, and I am the Executive Director for Voices for Alabama's Children. And it is our privilege to host this webinar this afternoon to support child care directors who are interested in applying for the TASCC grants. We are a coalition of a number of advocacy groups, including the Alabama Partnership for Children, Alabama School Readiness Alliance, and Voices for Alabama's Children, who are hoping to support our child care system throughout this pandemic, particularly as we work on getting the federal funds into your hands so we can keep you healthy and solvent. We have been working very closely with DHR throughout the entirety of the pandemic to support their incredibly important work within the child care system. We are going to go through briefly the TASCC grants, what that is, and then Khaleesi Chong, who is with the Alabama Partnership for Children, will be walking step by step through how to apply for a STAARS vendor code. And the STAARS vendor code is a prerequisite for the grant. So I'll get to that. Khaleesi, if you'll go to the next slide, please. As I said, I'm Stephen Warner with Voices. Khaleesi, who you see on the screen, is with Alabama Partnership for Children. You also see Jennifer Cannell, who is with the Department of Human Resources. Many of you will see in the chat, you may see Allison Mullendorf or Shannon Thornton responding to your questions. Before we get too far into this, I would encourage you to use the question and answer tool to ask questions. And if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us who you're with in the chat, use that feature in the chat. We will also, throughout the presentation, be posting links in the chat. Also, to let everyone know, we are recording this. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and we'll be sharing that YouTube link out to everyone who registered, and encourage you to share it with anyone that you know that may have to miss today. At the end of the presentation, Khaleesi will be answering questions about the STAARS process that she can, and DHR will have staff, Jennifer, to answer questions about the grant itself. And so if we don't answer your questions immediately, know that we are capturing them, and we will try our very best to get all of those questions answered at the end of the presentation. So to briefly touch on what the TASCC grant is, this is the second influx of federal funds that have come to DHR to support childcare. CARES, which was passed last March, so allowed DHR to create the TASCC grant over the summer. And then in December, Congress appropriated another large bucket of money, and this is that bucket of money as DHR tries to get those funds out to you. There's a wide variety of things they're doing with that, but we are really, really appreciative of their willingness to make these grants available to every licensed child care center and home that can get the application filled out in time. I know that they want to get this money out into your hands so that we can help you be sustainable. The grant is open as of April 7th, and it will be open through May 7th. And so there is a limited window to apply for it. It is eligible to all licensed child care providers, both center and homes, as long as you are in good standing, currently licensed, and do not have corrective action currently going on. You are eligible to apply for this. It provides financial relief to help stabilize the number of child care providers that are open by offsetting some of the costs of operating during the pandemic. It is incredibly broad in what you can do with it. There are actually very few things you can't do with it, and we'll talk briefly about that. The grant amounts are based on each provider's daytime license capacity, and the grant is $500 per child. So if your capacity is 50, it's 50 times 500. To be eligible, licensed providers must be open as of April 7th. They must also guarantee that you will remain open for at least 1 year after receiving the grant. That doesn't include holiday closures or if you get closed because of COVID, but that you're still going to be in business for at least 1 year. Next slide. So we encourage you, if you have not yet visited the DHR website, please go there. The application is available online, and the link will be in the presentation. If we can also drop that link into the chat, I'll do that as soon as I'm done talking. So you can click through to it. There's the first page. So it is all available there. If you have specific questions that don't get answered today, we encourage you to reach out to DHR at quality.enhancement@dhr.alabama.gov, the email that's on your screen, and their incredibly qualified staff will be able to answer questions probably more accurately than I would even dream of. So we appreciate it. Now, I wanted to briefly introduce Caliste. We are thrilled that she is on board and helping us today. She is with the Alabama Partnership for Children, and she has been a consultant for many, many of you over the years. And she has personally registered for this, so she is going to walk all the way through the STAARS vendor code. This is not the TASCC grant, but this is that prerequisite number that you have to put into the grant in order to be able to submit it. If you already have a first-class pre-K classroom or provide subsidy care or any of the other places where you get funds from DHR, you already have a STAARS vendor code. You have to have that. But if you've never received any of those funds, then this may be something new. And we recognize that for many, many centers that don't currently have a code, this could be a major stumbling block. And this is the reason why we're hosting this today, is hopefully remove that block barrier from you for accessing these TASCC grants. So I will now turn it over to Caliste, and I will mute and turn my screen off, and I will see you at the end of the presentation.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Stephen, for this opportunity, and thank you, Allison, for hosting the webinar. I'll also say that Michelle Rabin with the Teach Scholarship Program with Alabama Partnership for Children is also here with us. She'll also be helping to answer questions in the Q&A. I know that she's helped several childcare providers to walk through the STAARS vendor registration process. And I'll preface this by saying that, most of you that know me are going to know that I don't work for DHR. I don't work for the Alabama vendor system or any other state agency. I work with Alabama Partnership for Children, and we are a statewide nonprofit. And we truly want to see Alabama childcare programs to make it through this pandemic. I work with childcare programs every day to provide trainings and technical assistance around a variety of issues. And it's really our goal to see childcare programs get back on their feet and to come out stronger on the other side of this pandemic. And I hope that we're all seeing the light at the end of the tunnel during this pandemic, but I know that it's not over yet. And we know that you all as childcare providers need more support to sustain your program. There are so many partners and advocates like Stephen and Allison Mullendorf and Gail at Alabama Partnership for Children that are working tirelessly to advocate for childcare programs in Alabama. And I commend them and I commend DHR. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and everyone else from DHR that's on the call today as well, for all of your support and all of your efforts. And the DHR grant is one huge step to helping childcare programs to make it through this pandemic. And I'm so excited to see what comes of this. So we truly want to see every eligible program to submit their application. And I know that DHR does too. I commend DHR for providing this grant opportunity. And I know our US legislature, I commend them for providing funds for childcare through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And that is really a mouthful. I know that DHR is working so hard every day and night, probably, to get these applications processed. So I heard earlier this week that over 800 applications had already been submitted. And within just the first day, 200 applications were submitted. So I know that you all are working hard over there, and thank you. So why am I tasked with talking about the vendor registration? I have nothing to do with vendor registration. It's just really been made clear to us that there are some barriers for childcare programs that keep them from submitting their grant application. And registering for a vendor code seems to be a huge barrier time and time again when speaking with childcare programs as well. There's been a lot of you that have called me this week or called Michelle Rabin this week asking for help to walk through this process. So I'm going to try my very best to break this process down as much as I can to walk you through step by step on how to register and receive your STAARS vendor code so your program can apply for DHR. So if you already have a vendor code and you've already submitted your application, this webinar may not be exactly for you, because this is literally what the webinar is all about, walking you through the process to get your vendor code. So I just want to start off by saying that the STAARS vendor self-service system is not the Alabama Quality STAARS program. The Alabama Quality STAARS program is our state's quality rating and improvement system. It's not affiliated in any way with the STAARS vendor registration that is a prerequisite for being able to submit your DHR grant. So I just want to make that very clear. It's not the Quality STAARS program that you all have been participating in, where they come to your programs and do assessments and provide quality enhancements. It's not that program. It's not affiliated in any way, completely separate. So kind of from the next slide on, I'm not really going to talk about the program and say the word STAARS, just to try to keep it separate and to reduce some confusion. I'm just going to refer to it as the vendor system. So what is the STAARS vendor system? It's the state's accounting system for all financial, procurement, and procurement is just a fancy word for purchasing, the state's purchasing of services or products or really any type of goods in human resource transactions. So all vendor interactions, including solicitations, purchase orders, payments, receipts, they're all maintained in this STAARS vendor program. And to do any type of formal business with the state of Alabama, you need to have an account. So here are some acronyms that you're going to hear throughout the presentation and that you're going to see all throughout the registration process. So the first is STAARS. So STAARS stands for State of Alabama Accounting and Resource System, not the Quality STAARS program. And I won't say that again, I promise. VSS is the vendor self-service. And this is literally just the name of the web portal that helps vendors conduct business with state agencies. Then you have TIN, which is the taxpayer identification number. And for most of you as childcare providers that have a registered business in Alabama, that TIN is going to be your EIN, your employer identification number. So I'm going to kind of use those in some ways interchangeably. And then EFT is electronic funds transfer. So there's 4 main steps to registering and to get your vendor code and to make sure it's activated. So the first step is to search to see if your program already has a vendor number. So whether you know that you have one or not, this is the process. This is the first step of the process, no matter what. The second step is to actually go through the registration process. And there's 5 sections that I'm going to walk you through today through that registration process. The third is to submit some documentation by email, and we're going to go through all of that. And the fourth is to check to make sure that your vendor number is actually activated, and we'll go through that as well. This is not the most exciting presentation that I have ever had to present, but I hope that we're able to get through this together. There's a lot of slides, and this is a really tedious process, but I hope that through this process and through me walking through each step, I hope that it will help you all to be successful in getting your vendor code so that you can submit your grant for DHR. All right, for the first step, does your program already have a vendor number? So Stephen has already mentioned this, but there are some programs that already have a vendor number. So if you received the first DHR TASCC grant back last summer, then you already have a vendor number. If you have a first class pre-K grant, you already have a vendor number. And then also any childcare providers that participate in CACFT, they're also required to have a vendor number in order to register. So if you are one of those folks and have either that grant or you participate in CACFT, then you already have a vendor number. And I was told that programs that participate in childcare subsidies, they may or may not have a vendor code. I was a little confused about that. And I believe that I was told that if you register for subsidy in the last year, that you for sure have a vendor code. So that's just, you'll have to figure that out. All right, so the first step, here we go. The first step to whether figuring out whether you have a vendor code or not, and then the first step to register, it's all the same. So this is the state's procurement website. And I meant to say on a previous slide, the actual website to go to for procurement. And I hope that they'll put that into the chat box. And there's also a manual that was listed on one of the former slides, and it literally will walk you through the entire process. And some of the screenshots that I'm sharing today, I actually took from that manual. And so I'm just going to provide a virtual version of that manual today and walk you through that process. So the first step is to go to the state's procurement website. So this is the STAARS vendor self-service website, and you're going to click register. And I will say that the text on the screen is very, very small whenever you register. Even on a computer, it's very small. So I definitely recommend to use a computer if possible to complete the registration. I believe that you can do it on a mobile phone, but the text, again, is just so small, it's really hard to see. So next, you'll see the memorandum of agreement, and this information is from the State of Alabama Division of Purchasing, and it contains some key information about subscriptions and subscription fees. So you do need to read this, but I need to tell you that registration for a vendor number is completely free. I actually register myself as an individual just to make sure I fully understand the process. And the only option on the website that requires you to pay a fee is if you want to bid on work. So a subscribed vendor is a registered vendor who has a paid subscription fee to participate in the state of Alabama's bidding process. So if you want to actively participate in the bidding process, you have to pay as a subscribed vendor. But as a childcare provider, this is completely free. You're not going to be using the bidding process. So even that text that's here, you don't really need to worry about that because that's not relevant to you. And then you're going to click accept. And then you'll come to this registration tips page. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a couple of slides, but this is just telling you what type of information that you need to go ahead and gather so that you can complete all of the requirements at one time. So then you're going to click next. And we're here. Search for an existing account. So as a childcare provider that's a registered business in the state of Alabama, you are going to have an employer identification number, and you all should have that. Probably very easy to get that number. So that is literally your taxpayer identification number that you're going to use. So you're going to enter your EIN number here, and you're going to press search. And then if you don't have an EIN number, which I'm pretty sure that most childcare providers are going to have an EIN number, you can also use your last name and your social security number, and you can press search and see that way. But you literally just need to put in your EIN number and press search. And then if you already have an account and your program is already registered, you're going to see text like this that's going to pop up. And it's going to show you your vendor number. If you didn't already know it, your vendor number is going to be here. And this is whenever I went back and tried to check to make sure that my account was activated. Whenever I checked it, my vendor number popped up, and it's a 9-digit number. Your vendor number is always going to be a 9-digit number. It's going to say your legal business name, and then it's going to show if your account is activated. So if I were to go back and put my information in, this is the information that would pop up, and it would show me that, yes, I'm registered. Yes, I have a vendor number, and yes, it's activated. So if your information pops up and it shows that you have a vendor number, then that's amazing. That's perfect. You just need to take that vendor number and go and submit your DHR grant with it. The other thing that you need to think about, though, if you go to this website and you check, is to make sure that it's activated. And if this says no, we're going to talk about what to do with that a little bit later. But now we're just going to really focus on what to do if you don't have a vendor number at all and if your account's not registered. So if you go back here and you entered in your number and you find that your program isn't registered, then this text is going to show up for you. It's going to say, no results have been found for your account. Please perform further research or select the new registration button to create an account. So we're going to click new registration. And then we're going to make sure that we have all of this documentation together. So you're going to need to know the legal information for each childcare program location. So you're going to need to know the physical location and physical address of each location. So if you're a family childcare provider, then it's only going to be your home address, unless I don't think that you're going to have multiple family childcare providers underneath your name. You're going to have your own, just one address, which will be your home address. If you're a center-based program, and you are an owner and you have multiple childcare programs that you own, then you need to have all of the physical addresses for all of those programs. But the very first one that you're going to enter through the registration is going to be the main site, or what they're going to call the headquarters. So you need to have that information, your tax ID number, which you already have because you used it to search to see if you have a vendor number. And that's going to be your employer identification number. Then you're going to need to have your legal business name, and you've got to make sure that the information that you submit is accurate and consistent. So your legal business name is going to be that business name that you would typically put on your W-9. So make sure that you use that. I know that, excuse me. I know that sometimes with licensed childcare providers that are also located in a church, sometimes for the legal business name, it's actually all of the business matters fall underneath the church's name and not the actual childcare program name. So you have to be really careful with that, but just make sure that with all the documentation you submit to DHR and all the documentation that you submit through the vendor system, that you use your legal business name. And then you're just going to need contact information for the account administrator. And if you're the owner or the director, then that's going to be you, and contact information for ordering and payment as well, if that's different than yourself as the director or the family childcare provider. But I always just say, please check, double check, triple check everything you do so that you'll get it right the first time. And if you input wrong information, then that's going to prolong your process to get your vendor number and to get it activated. So that's going to prolong the amount of time that it's going to take in order to get your grant. So now you're going to complete my user information. And this is literally just setting up your username and your password for the system. And make sure that you write down your user ID and your password, because you're going to need this. You're going to have this in order to get back in the system to complete the registration process. So you'll enter in a user ID, which just says is case sensitive, and only the information that has a red asterisk beside it is required. So like you see here, fax and extension is not required, but everything else here is required. So you set up your user ID, enter in your information. You have to make sure that your email address is entered in accurately. So you re-enter it to make sure it's right. And then you're going to create a password and a security question. And then you will click next. And there's buttons usually at the top and the bottom of each one of the screens. And usually it's in the far right corner of the screen. So after you submit that, after you press next and submit that, then you're going to have to go and verify your email address. So a screen like this is going to pop up to tell you that you're going to have to verify your email. You can't move forward with the process until you verify your email address. So you can click next, and then a email is going to pop up, or not an email, I'm sorry, a message is going to pop up like this to say that a verification email has been sent to you. Open the email and click the link provided in the email. So we're going to click next. This is what the email from the STAARS vendor system actually looks like. This is the exact email that I received whenever I registered last week. And be sure that you understand that you can only click this link one time. And I accidentally clicked it twice, and it wasn't very easy to get back in there and to get them to send me another email. So only click this one time, and it's going to bring you back to the login screen. And then you're going to be able to log in with your user ID and your passwords that you already wrote down, that you won't lose it, and you put it in a safe place, and you're going to press login. And now you get to step 2, which is completing the 5 sections of the actual process. So are y'all ready to walk through the 5 sections of the process? So it's new account information, my business information. You're going to enter in addresses and contacts, additional business information, and you're going to see your registration summary. You're going to get to review that. You're going to double check it, triple check it to make sure all of your information is entered in correctly. So then we're going to press next. Okay, so this is the first section, and this is for new account information. So as a childcare provider with an employer identification number, you're going to have these different options here for what type of taxpayer identification number that you're going to use. So if you're an individual like myself, I would register with a Social Security number, and then I would click Social Security number here. But if you are a childcare provider with an EIN number, you're going to click here, and you're going to use that EIN number and not your Social Security number. And I recommend even family childcare providers that typically might use their Social Security number for something like this to go ahead and use your EIN number just to register it underneath your business. And then once you click that, then you have to come down and choose your classification. And this classification aligns with the W-9 form. So typically whenever you complete a W-9 form for your program, this is whatever option that you pick for classification on that W-9 is going to be the same option that you choose here. So if you choose an EIN number up here, then usually you're going to say that you're a sole proprietor. If you are an individual that is a director or owner and you co-own, you own a business, own a childcare center with another individual, then it might be a partnership. Or if you're part of a larger facility that has multiple locations, you might consider that a corporation. So typically, you're probably going to use sole proprietor. So you're going to click there, and then you're going to click next. But what I will say is that if you have to select the appropriate classification for your business, and it must correspond with the taxpayer identification number that you choose up here. So if it doesn't match the classification, then you're going to see an error message, and it's not going to let you continue on. And it'll tell you what to do to make the change to make it accurate. Now we're on section 2 of the registration process, and you enter in your business information. So what you're going to do is, with this right here, verify my locations by, and you're going to click this down arrow, and there's going to be a couple of options there. And what you are going to click is use my TIN number. So use my taxpayer identification number. What you don't want to do is click create my own. So if you choose use my taxpayer identification number, then you actually won't even have an opportunity to type anything here. So you want to use your EIN number, your taxpayer identification number. And remember I said taxpayer identification number for childcare is going to mean and going to be your employer identification number. So click the down arrow, click use my TIN number, and click next. So now we're going to enter the legal name that you would put on your W-9, that legal name. If you have a doing business as name, you can add it here. But again, only the information with a red asterisk is the information that you absolutely have to put in. So you don't have to add this, and you don't have to add that either. So the next section is the 1099 taxpayer identification information. So on the last slide, on the last information, you chose that to use your taxpayer identification number. So that's where you enter it in here. So these are 2 text boxes that they're not even going to be open for you to be able to enter anything in. So don't worry about create a taxpayer ID number because you already have one. So you're going to enter that employer identification number, and see, it even says here a reminder of what you need to enter in there. So you're going to enter that number there. You're going to enter your legal address information, which has to be a physical address. You're going to enter that here. Double check, triple check, make sure this address is completely correct. And we're going to go over the electronic payment information in another slide. So this information is actually optional, but you don't need to skip this section if you want to actually get your grant funded and get it deposited into your account. You have to do this part. If you don't have your checkbook with you, then you need to go find it and bring it back whenever you complete it. So that should be part of the process also in the beginning. Whenever you gather all your materials, just go ahead and get your checkbook and bring it with you. because that's going to have all the information that you need for the electronic funds transfer information. So the three things that you really need are the name of your banking institution, the ABA number, which is the routing number. And I have a check here that I'll show you where to find the routing number, and your account number. So the routing number is always going to be on the bottom left side of a check, and it's 9 numbers. It's going to be this here. And typically it's going to be surrounded by this little symbol here. So those little symbols, they don't mean anything to us. You just want these 9 numbers in the middle. That's your routing number. So you're going to enter your routing number into the text box that says ABA number, which is here. And you're also going to enter that routing number into the routing ID number. So these two are exactly the same. I'm not exactly sure why they have you enter it twice, but they do. And it's the exact same number. And then your account number on your check, if you aren't aware, it's going to be to the right of the routing number. It's going to be here. And if you're confused about your checking account number versus the check number, you can always view the check number here and then just take these numbers off and just use this as your checking number, checking account number. So you don't want to add all the numbers, including your check number. You just want the checking account number right there. And then these sections aren't actually listed in the manual that we're going to send you all, that we're going to share, but they appeared whenever I went through the process. So I just wanted to show you that, you know, if you see these screens for discount information and executive compensation, don't get hung up on these sections. You don't need to complete that. There's no red asterisk. You don't need to complete it. You don't even need to think about it. Don't get hung up. Just keep moving. And I went backwards. Let's move forward. So section 3 is where you add addresses and contacts. So previously you entered an address, and it's going to show up here. And what these questions are asking you are, should your legal address listed above be used for any other type of address? So if this is your only address, if you're a family childcare provider or a sole center and you're not part of a group of centers, then you're going to answer yes to each one of these questions. Is your address information the same for administrative, ordering, payment, and billing addresses? Do you have the same contact for all address types? Now, if you're part of a larger corporation where you have multiple childcare programs, then some of this information might be different. So if you have one location that serves for and takes care of all the billing for everything, for all the other programs, then you might have to press no for some of those. But overall, if you're a family childcare provider, a sole center, you're going to click yes, and it's going to make the process easier. So on this screen, you have an option to check for billing, to change your billing address, or to enter a billing address, or you can uncheck it to not enter a billing address. So I will say that the state of Alabama and the Department of Human Resources, they're not going to be billing you for anything. So I would just recommend to uncheck that, and you don't really need to enter a billing address, but if you would like to, then that's perfectly fine too. If you check it, then these text boxes are going to open up down here, and I wasn't able to get a full screenshot of all the information that you have to fill in, but you were just able to add in the street address, city, state, zip code for the billing address if it's different than the physical address that you completed before. So if you do have a PO box and you use your PO box for mailing instead of your physical address, this is an instance where you probably need to check this and enter that PO box in. There's been some cases where we've tried to send materials to childcare providers, but we used the physical address instead of the PO box that they needed, and it was sent back to us. So make sure that you enter in a PO box here if that's where you need your information to be sent. Now we're at section 4. So additional business information. Now, this is a section that you can overall skip. You don't really have to enter in commodities or business types, but you can. For commodities, I would say just nix it. Don't even think about that. You don't need to do that because This is primarily for the bidding process, and that's not something that as childcare providers we're going to be going through. For business type, you can, if this isn't required, but if your business falls underneath one of these categories, you can check one of them and it doesn't hurt anything, So if you're a nonprofit center or program, then you can click nonprofit, or if you're a minority and you're a minority owned business, you can click minority owned, and then you would just click OK, and then you'll click next. So now we're at section 5. You finished basically the registration process. So this is your registration summary, and this is literally what my registration summary looked like. And you can see I didn't really enter in hardly any information, and I cleared out my street address that was down here. So you're going to look and check every single thing that's on here. This is multiple. You have to scroll down and scroll down. This is the information from all 5 of the sections, all in one registration summary. So scroll down, check every single thing, double check, triple check it to make sure that all of your information is accurate and correct. So if your information is accurate and correct, then you can press submit registration, which is right here. But if it's not accurate and correct, then you can click back and you can go back to those sections and make the changes that you need to make. And if there are any errors that the system picks up on, then you're going to have a red box at the top, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to go back and change. So we're going to click registration, submit registration. And you can see this is a really small box, and it would be really easy to just click save and close and go on about my business and think that, I'm done, I'm good to go. But make sure that you click submit registration so that it will actually go through. So then after you click submit registration, you're going to have a screen that's going to say, congratulations, you've completed the registration process. And look at there, there's your vendor code right there. That's awesome. But there's still steps that you need to take, and we're going to talk about that. So the first thing that you can do on this page is go ahead and download this W-9 certification form. And this is literally just your W-9 form. It's going to be pre-filled in, and you can print it out and sign it. And then vendor registration application. This is just a copy of your registration and all the information that you just reviewed. So I would suggest to print that out and just keep it as a file, download it on your computer and save it. And then, yay, you have your vendor code, but you're not done. There's still another process. So step 3 is submitting your documentation. So there's 3 main forms that you're going to have to submit. Number 1 is that W-9 form that you just downloaded and that you just signed. Number 2 is documentation that's confirming your legal name, your taxpayer identification number, and your legal address. And then electronic payment verification. And we're going to talk about what each one of these is. So the W-9 form, you've already had the opportunity to download that, but if for some reason you didn't download it and you didn't save it, then you can go to the IRS W-9 form, and you can just Google IRS W-9 form and a PDF will come up, so you can complete that. But whenever you complete this, you need to make sure that your name and your classification is exactly the same as what you entered whenever you were registering for your vendor number. And then you need to make sure that you use your employer identification number. The big thing here is that all of your information has to be accurate, and it has to be consistent across everything that you submit. So W-9 form is first. Then you have to choose one of these 2 documents. So you can have a letter on your company letterhead that shows your legal name, your taxpayer identification number, which is your employer identification number, and that shows your legal address. Or you can submit documentation confirming your legal name, your taxpayer identification number, and your legal address. And that could be some type of form like the 147C form for IRS. So that was the second form. The third form is for your electronic payment, and you need to do this, don't skip it. So you can either use a voided check, which will probably be the easiest thing. You can actually get a letter from your bank verifying your bank account ownership. And that letter must include the vendor name, the account number, and the bank routing number, so the ABA number that we talked about, or an account statement for the bank indicated on the application. So probably the two easiest things are going to be either a voided check, or you can download an account statement from your bank online and submit it. And so you're going to gather those three things. You're going to scan them all in, and then you're going to send it to this email address. So vendors@comptroller.alabama.gov. And you're going to, in the subject line, you're going to add new vendor account, and then you're going to add that vendor code. So make sure that you write down that vendor code because you're going to need it several different times. All right. So you're going to attach your completed and signed W-9, and then the two documents that we talked about in the previous slide. So after you submit that, well, there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about here, because I feel like there might be some barriers around having access to a printer or access to a scanner. And what I want to say about that is that if you don't have a printer, then you can go to the library. Go to the library, have all of your forms ready, email them to yourself, and just go there, print them out, sign them, and scan them back to yourself. If you do have a printer and you're able to print these documents or whatever you need to do with them, sometimes you can even electronically sign your W-9. And I typically will electronically sign any form that I possibly can to submit it. But anything that you need to scan, you can do that at the library. Or any childcare resource and referral agency is going to be open and willing to helping you print your forms or scanning them in so that you can submit them and do whatever you need to do. And then the third thing that I would recommend is use your smartphone. I have a scanner on my phone, and I can literally take as good of a scan as on my phone that I could do on my printer here. So you can use your smartphone, download a scanner app. Even on my phone nowadays, just whenever I go to open to take a picture, it will give me an option to actually scan a document. And it looks just like what a form would look like if I scanned it using a printer. So use your smartphone, use what you have available, use resources that you have available. If you're in Tuscaloosa and I can help you, I'm more than glad. Let me know. If you're in Montgomery, Michelle and APC staff would be more than willing to help you. Don't let not having a printer or not having a scanner get in the way of you being able to finish this process out. We want to help you, and we'll do everything we can to help you get it done. So what's next? After you submit, after you have your vendor code, and after you submit all of your documentation by email, so the comptroller's office is going to validate your vendor account. So if everything is in order, then your account's going to be approved. You're good to go. If not, then you'll be contacted by phone or by email. And that's why it's really important to make sure that you enter in, an accurate email address so that they can contact you. And then after everything is set with that and your account is approved, the last step that you need to do is just to check to make sure your vendor number is activated. And I spoke with Tammy Gibson at the Department of Early Childhood Education a couple of days ago about this process. And she says that this is one of the things that providers get hung up on quite a bit, is just making sure that their account is activated after they get their vendor number. So you can do that to check to make sure that your account is activated by going back through that same process in the beginning. So go back to the main web page for the vendor self-service. You're going to click register. You're going to see this same memorandum of agreement statement. You're going to click accept term. You don't really need to pay attention to this anymore because you're already through with the process. Click next. And you can enter in, just like you did before, your EIN number here and click search. And then it's going to show you whether your account is activated or not. So if your account is not activated, well, if your account is activated, then it's going to just say yes here, and that's it. You're good to go. If it's not activated, then it's going to say no here, and then it's going to give you an option to click here to activate your account. And then after that, you're going to enter in your vendor verification password. And this is just your tax ID number. This is just your employer ID number. So enter that in here, press submit. You'll go back through this process of creating a user ID. You're going to click next. And then you're going to press submit registration. And then a slide is going to come up that says, thank you, congratulations, you've completed the registration process. And then I recommend, after you make sure that your account is activated and you're good to go, you have your vendor number, then use your user ID and password, go back to this opening screen, the very first website, and use your user ID and password to log in, and just check out your account. Check out and make sure that all of your information is correct again. Make sure that everything is consistent, and then say you're good to go. So we have just walked through the entire process to get registered on the STAARS vendor system. So if you have any questions, we would love to answer them. And just as we mentioned before at the very beginning of the email, very beginning of the webinar, this is DHR's email address if you have any questions for them, or Jennifer is on the phone on the webinar with us as well. And then this is the information for the STAARS vendor registration. So if you have any questions beyond what we went through during this webinar, you can reach out to Dan by phone or by email to ask. And as always, we are always glad to help in any way that we can, and just reach out if you need support. This is my email address here, cchong@apcteam.org. And this is Michelle Rabin's email address, mrabin@apcteam.org. We're very glad to help in any way that we possibly can. And that is all.
Thank you, Kalisti, so very much for all of that. Jennifer, if you want to join us. So we've got Jennifer Cannell from DHR and Kalisti, who has done such an incredible job with walking us all the way through the STAARS process. If you have questions, I encourage you to put them in the question and answer. I will go through a couple of ones that have already been answered. Several of them that have been posted on there are around facility upkeep or maintenance. Can we paint a room if needed? Can we renovate playgrounds? Jennifer, do you want to speak to both of those?
Yes, both of those would be allowable, and they would go under the facilities cost expenditure category. The only thing that you're prohibited from doing with this funding would be to do a major renovation or construction. That would mostly consist of expanding your square footage. If you cannot use it to add on a room to your facility or something like that, but anything else, changing the paint, changing out the flooring, those are considered minor renovations, and those would all be allowable.
Fantastic. We had questions around expectation of timeline once your application is submitted.
Yes, so we are processing the applications as quickly as we possibly can. We have received close to 1,000 applications thus far. So, and we just started taking applications on April the 7th. So if you submit your application online, once you click that submit button, you will see a screen that says, thank you for submitting. Your response has been submitted. Your TASCC grant application has been submitted, and we've got the email address, the quality.enhancement if you have questions. That means that we've received your application. Now you will receive a copy of your responses to the email address that you provided in that. If you don't see that in your email, we encourage you to check your junk or spam folder with that. Sometimes they'll pop up there. If you submit your application via mail or email, we are receiving them that way as well. And if you've not heard anything within 10 business days, then please call our number at 334-242-1425. And you'll ask to speak, tell them what county you're in and your asking for your TASCC worker, and they'll direct you to the right person, because we have the caseload split up by counties, and they'll be able to confirm. We do ask that you refrain from doing that prior to 10 business days, just so that every time we get a phone call, it takes away from us being able to process them, or every email that we get. Also, please refrain from submitting your application multiple times. We are getting a good number of duplicates being submitted, and that just bogs up the process when we're trying to sort through them. If you submit, you only need to submit your application one way. So you don't have to email it and mail it and submit it online. Just one of those options, and we've received it and we can process it. Now, I do know that there were some questions about how long will it take me to get the funding once I submit that. So we are committed to processing these applications within the 10 business days that we get them. We are sending them to our finance department, who will put the order into that STAARS system to make the payment. However, the actual payment will come from the State Department of Finance, who is in control of this whole vendor system that Caliste so well explained today. And we don't have any control or say so about how long it takes them to cut a check or to make that EFT payment if you selected EFT. So that's just out of our hands in that regard.
So Jennifer, if you would repeat that phone number to call out, we're going to put that in the chat.
Yes, it's area code 334-242-1425. And that's the Child Care Services direct line. And Stephen, if I could just mention one other thing, Caliste mentioned, did such a great job about how to go in there, and when she was talking about putting your address in there, we do want to mention, on the application, we ask for the facility's physical address and the facility's mailing address. If the address that you choose in the STAARS self-vendor portal is different from either your the facility's physical address or the facility's mailing address, we can do nothing about that. We can't make the payment go to anywhere else other than what you put in as the mailing address for the payment into the STAARS vendor system. We can't change that. You would have to log back in and change that yourself. So if you choose to get your payment dispersed as a paper check, that paper check is going to come to the mailing address that you indicated in your STAARS account. In the self-service portal, regardless of what your mailing address is listed on your TASC application to us. And that's just out of our control. So be sure when you create that vendor account that you are making sure that you put the address that you want that check mailed to if you chose the paper check route versus an electronic funds transfer.
Thank you. Any questions for Caliste or for Jennifer?
Sorry, that was one of the questions that in the Q&A. What if we got our vendor code and didn't put our bank information? Will they send a check by mail? So yes, so it is optional to put your bank information in there. I do recommend going that route just because our post office and difficulties that we've had at APC with our mail and getting checks to folks. But as Jennifer said, they will send a check by mail if you didn't put your payment information in there.
Any other questions? We don't have any in the question and answer box or in the chat. I want to absolutely thank Caliste and the team at APC, the Partnership for Children, for all of your incredible work and help on this. I want to thank Allison Mullendorf and Alabama School Readiness Alliance for hosting us today and helping with the chat. Jennifer, thank you and all the team at DHR for the incredible work that you're doing and getting these funds out into the child care director's hands. And to all of the directors who watch this, thank you for the incredibly important work that you do for our children. As I mentioned, we will be sharing this recording on YouTube and sending that link out. So if you have anyone that you know that needs to see this, please share it broadly and widely and as frequently as possible so that anybody who is has a STAARS vendor code as a barrier to applying for the TASCC grants can help hopefully get that barrier removed, and we can get these dollars into your hands so that your businesses stay solvent and you keep caring for the children in Alabama. Thank you all, and have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.